Welcome to the Business for Aligned Women podcast. I'm Honey. I'm a coach working primarily with women and specializing in aligned business, personal transformation, and embodiment. Each week here I'll be sharing business strategy, business advice, tips and tools for you to think more deeply, for you to get more self-aligned, and for you to start your week in the most conscious and intentional way possible. Welcome to this week's episode. We're doing something a little bit different. I do this every now and then, but I'm going to be giving a life update, talking about kind of what's going on for me behind the scenes. And I will definitely get into some of the lifestyle changes and personal practices that I have that support me in business. And I am sure that in sharing what I'm experiencing and what's going on for me, it will be a little bit insightful and actually help you to feel more capable in what you're doing. Because I think when we see social media or we just listen to a podcast and we get kind of the highlights, we can really easily project what we think that person's life is like, and that can give us an excuse as to why we're not doing what we want to be doing. And I've got a lot of kind of real talk today about what's happening with me and how I'm still able to show up, even though everything is definitely not perfect. Before we get into it today, I did want to invite you to my self-alignment workshop. This is something that I'm going to be talking about a little bit over the next month in October. It is a workshop that is all around establishing your very personal and very unique values. And if you've done values work before, it's a little bit different in that I'm really focusing on breaking down cultural assumptions, gender roles, anything that you think you're supposed to value or you're supposed to say that you value, and some big ones that come up which are really indicative of a not authentic value: freedom, love, family, lots of things like that, energetics, energy, things that are broad that you can't actually define, things that rely on other people in order to be embodied and achieved, and things that are so broad that you'll never be able to know if you are actually embodying them. And this workshop is all about getting really granular with your values so that you can really transparently and authentically look at your life and go, what do I currently do which is embodying that value, and what do I need to do more or less of, or how do I need to approach things differently in order to actually be living that value? And if, there's any question, or if you're wondering, how do I get to build this lifestyle, basically from, I was working my dream job, but I was miserable. I was crying on my walks to work every day. I was not saving any money because I was just paying it in rent and for my art practice, and going out and blowing whole checks on drinks, buying drinks for all of my friends, something I used to do all the time, living in a tiny apartment in the city and having really, really not supportive relationships, both friends and partners. And now the only thing that I would change about my life is I would love to be by the beach, but everything else is like to my perfect specifications. And sometimes I go, I don't know how we kind of got here, because our life is so guided by, and I say ours as in mine and my partners and our pets, life is really guided by the way I like to live and the way I am, and being connected to nature and having a beautiful garden and having a slow home and just a sanctuary for home. And if I stop for a moment and think about it, the only way that I got here was that I knew my values and I ruthlessly lived according to them. And by knowing my values and embodying them on a day-to-day basis, that gave me the boundaries that I needed in order to progress forward. So I'm sure a lot of you probably realize that if you're feeling stuck or that you haven't moved forward in the way that you would like to, one of the big problems is boundaries. But if you're not living according to your own unique values, or if you're living according to what society or your family or culturally you're supposed to be doing, it's really hard to even know what boundaries you need to be having, because you don't know what you require in order to get where you're going, because you don't even know where you're going, because you're just kind of running off of what other people think and how you want to be perceived by other people. But when you know your values, you know what you need to be prioritizing, and you know what you need to be keeping sacred, and that equals boundaries. And the combination of living my values and having really bulletproof boundaries and being brave enough to share those boundaries and say them to people. And I like to actually think of it as modeling them for my clients, because my boundaries are never rude, but it is me saying, hey, this is what we said we would do, and that's not what's happening. Let's get back to that. And 9 times out of 10, when I do that with my clients, they're always so appreciative. And if they say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I say, no apologies. I just like to model my boundaries for you. And they'll say, you know what, it was so nice to have someone, really normally, kindly, not fluffy, but just lay down the law and remind us of what our parameters are. And it inspires them to do it with their clients as well. So boundaries and value living is how I got where I am. And if you don't know what your values are, then you can't kind of begin this process. And that's why I say that my self-alignment workshop is my start here. Even if you want to work with me purely about business, and even if you have a business that's established and you just want me to help you scale it or grow it, your values need to be the first thing. You need to know yourself and know what is important to you in order to live a life that feels nourishing and feels good. That is a super affordable workshop. It's like 80 Australian dollars. I think it's about 50 American dollars. And it's really life-changing. And I will put the caveat, it's life-changing if you actually do it. If you do the whole workshop and then you start making changes in your life. And I do have a couple of tools in it to help you make those changes. And I do suggest that you make those changes very gently and very slowly. So this isn't something that is a one and done. This is a long-term, rest of your life embodiment process. And I invite you to take it. If you have any questions about it, send me a message, because living unabashedly and ruthlessly living according to my values and seeing other women do it is something that makes me really happy and lights me up. And I know that when my clients have done it, it's made them feel so much more confident and happy and empowered. So let's get into what's been happening for me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about health stuff and the way things aren't perfect, but the majority of this conversation isn't going to be a downer. Actually, I've had a lot of health stuff go on, and I'm in a really positive place, and I've done a lot of changes that have made a world of difference. And honestly, I actually feel like I'm almost getting my life back after 2 years of really, really intense fatigue. But a really interesting thing is that, September was always going to be a big month for me, and I knew it was. And if you don't know me, or if you haven't worked with me, I'm a stickler for planning. And essentially I plan about 1 year in advance, and then I reflect monthly and quarterly, and I also plan monthly. So I do that yearly process through a yearly planning system, which I am releasing a self-led workshop on later on this year, so you'll be able to get that. And then my monthly planning I do with my Notion board, and I kind of do it all in my Notion board, the monthly Notion board, and then I will transfer that information over to Google Calendar and also a digital planner that I have from Etsy that I have on my Remarkable paper tablet. And those 3 systems work really well together, and it kind of covers everything. And the other thing that happens is that my Google Calendar is linked to my Apple Watch. So I'm getting really gentle little vibration notifications of what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I didn't get those notifications, I wouldn't do anything. And I always have an underlying stress of like not having had put a client session into my calendar properly and not getting that notification, not showing up. But I also set alarms for my client session, so I don't think that will ever happen. That's just anxiety. And at the start of September or the end of August, I took August off and I knew that September was going to be big. So I set 3 goals for myself only every month, but I also do use a habit tracker. So I have a list of probably like 15 or 20 habits that I just want to make sure continuing to bubble along. But if I don't hit all those habits, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I also don't beat myself up over my 3 goals that I have, but I'm holding myself accountable. One of my goals this month was to be the first of a 3-month spending pause where I don't buy anything extra. That has absolutely been like totally thrown out the window. My excuses for that is that I've started jogging, so I needed to buy clothes and shoes for jogging in again. And that's really my only excuse that I have, but yet I have spent money on lots of other things. And one interesting thing about it is that I give myself probably about, I say $100 of a budget for books every month, but I do also pay for Kindle and Audible. So that's really like $150. And I think this month I probably already spent like $350 on books, and I'm catching up with a friend this week in the city, and part of our catch up is going to be going book shopping. So I know that there's going to be a bigger spend, but I am on my way to my yearly goal of reading 100 books. I think I'm up to 92 or 93. And the November, December this year, I'm not going to buy any new books, 0 spend, and I'm just going to read all of the amazing books that I already have and I've already bought. So one of my goals that I have achieved in September was that in knowing that it was a busy month, I would ensure that I made space to take care of myself. And that might sound like a funny goal to people if they've been really into like the self-improvement productivity thing, like, making sure that you take care of yourself, knowing that you have a busy month. Like, that's not a goal. Well, it is, because it's really easy to drop off on self-care practices and exercise and all of that kind of stuff, especially when you're busy or you're tired because you've been so busy. And so I had this goal and I was all set and I was all prepped. And then I think it was the very first week of September, I had this huge flare up with my back. I have a degenerated disc in the middle of my back from 23 plus years of really, really consistent hectic yoga practice and just doing way too many back bends. And that means that I can't really, I shouldn't say really, I cannot by any means do crunches anymore. And that kind of bending over action tends to flare it up. So I know that about myself, and yet I got sucked into doing a Pilates class, which was like 25 minutes of crunches, and then it flared. And then 2 days later, I did a lot of gardening and bending over and weeding and cleaning. And by the Sunday night, which I think was the first, before we did the first session of the Magnetic Mastermind, I was going to go to the ER and ended up having to see the doctor and the physio. And it was 2.5 weeks of being in a lot of agony. The first week was like extreme agony all day, every day, so much pain that I felt like I was going to vomit. And the only thing that really got me through was those stick-on deep heat patches. And I stuck them on my back. I think I had them on my back for 24 hours for like a week, and my skin got really weird. But that was, the universe saying, no, you really need to slow down. Like, you really are busy. And that means maybe, I couldn't exercise apart from walking for 2 weeks. And that's really annoying to me because I love exercising and I do it a lot. But it was like the universe saying, hold your horses, slow everything down, concentrate on the stuff that's already on your plate. And I wanted to share that because I think people see that I'm really consistent on social media. People have seen me show up in the Magnetic Mastermind with relatively good energy and holding the space with, being strong and powerful in that space and clear and being able to have, I think, pretty good, helpful conversations in it. And yet I was in absolute agony for the first 2 weeks, so much so that I would just go and vomit afterwards, because just, if you've ever had a disc problem, it's such a deep, visceral pain. And when your back is like that, all of the muscles in your back and all of the muscles in your abs are just constantly spasming to try and keep everything together. And it's just such a deep, disgusting, vomit-worthy pain. And yeah, I just want to share that, to be like, you know what? Like, not to be a hard ass or to be like, yeah, tough it out, but to be like, you know what? When you have a business, sometimes you just have to show up, even when you feel like absolute shit. And that is what having a business is. And that's the difference between having a business and having a hobby, which is something that keeps coming up a lot in my work. And it just means kind of sometimes you have to put on your big girl pants and get a hot water bottle and do the things. And I do see in my clients who don't progress that every time there's a hiccup, it's 2 to 3 weeks off. And I know I did a TikTok and a reel about this, and it did go pretty well. And I think a lot of people messaged saying, oh, excuse me, I feel seen, you violated me, because it's just really, really common. And that comes from approaching your business through a hobbyist perspective rather than a perspective of, this is my job, this is my career, I've committed to creating the transformations that I have decided to commit to, I've committed to my clients, I've committed to earning a certain amount, and I have these certain levels of consistency that I want to continue to hold for my community, even when I'm not feeling that great. So I did just want to share that little thing. And we haven't finished the Magnetic Mastermind yet. We've got our last session this week, but I've had a lot of great feedback, and I feel like it has been really powerful. And we've had a lot of shake-ups. And if you're in the Magnetic Mastermind, I think, you know, there's going to be a huge chunk of you that are probably realizing that you need to do a big overhaul and you need to actually change kind of the fundamental things in your business in order to make it financially viable. And that's something else that's been coming up a lot, is women coming to me and wanting to make a business because it's things that they like. I like this, so let's make a business. And then me looking at their idea and going, it's nice, but it's not financially viable. You can't sell that. There's no market for it. No one wants it. So again, we have to like realize that we can have things in our life that we enjoy and we can enjoy them, but we have to make a really informed, intelligent, and well-researched decision when we're building a business, and it can't be based on what you like. I find business development really interesting. I think my Cappy energy, maybe autism as well, I'm a hyper organized person, and I have my shit so far together, and I thrive on being organized, and I thrive on seeing structures and systems and outcomes and processes and having measurable things and being able to like go, well, if we do this, we'll get to here, and then in 3 months checking and then growing from there. I really thrive on that. But I wouldn't say it's like my favorite thing. You know, like I love knitting and I love baking cakes and I love gardening. And I have in the past made businesses from things that I liked, and I have taken work because it's been in something that I liked. And I'm telling you, it never worked out. It never worked out. And it's not to say that you can't like what you do. I think you should like what you do, but you shouldn't make a business because it's something that you think is nice at the moment. And I'm having a lot of conversations at the moment where I think my clients are starting to realize that this, you know, my brand, your branding, what you offer, who you're talking to, it shouldn't just be what you like. It needs to be more strategic than that in order for it to grow. I don't even know how we got there. But yeah, Mastermind's going great. And another little health update. So if you read my emails, I do send out probably every 2 months what I call my musings email. And that is basically this life update in an email with links to recommendations and a little bit more of a kind of poetic look at what's happening in my experience at the moment. So if you like these episodes, please subscribe to the emails to get those musing emails. They are probably the most popular thing that I share in my emails. But if you've been listening to them or reading them, I have been going through health stuff over the last couple of years, and it is finally resolving itself, and not to any help of the medical system. I'm really big on the medical system, but in this instance, it's proven that it's not going to help. And actually, I think the change that has happened is me dedicating to lifestyle changes. So that includes, exercise, diet, and supplements and sleep and all this kind of stuff. And I think that came from a point where I don't know if it was because I went to this doctor, or I don't know if I came to it myself, or I kind of had an appointment with my doctor. And if anyone's had any chronic illness, I think you'll resonate with there being a point in time where your doctor just kind of gives up on you. And it's really obvious. And that really happened. And I was like, okay, she's sick of me. Like, she's sick of me and she's not going to help anymore. And maybe she thinks I'm a hypochondriac or whatever, even though it's just been the one pain for 3 years. And then that conversation, that experience made me go, I have to give up on trying to fix this. I have to give up on thinking that there's a cure for this, and rather focus on building a life that helps it and supports it as best I can, but accepting that that pain might be part of my experience. Ever since I had that brainwave and honestly big crying session, I haven't had pain. Which is kind of strange. And it's because I made all these lifestyle changes. But for the last 5 months, I haven't really had that pain. I might even say 6 months. I haven't had that pain at all. And I've had it consistently for 3 years prior to that, maybe even 4. And I think I actually started seeing doctors about that pain 10 years ago. And it's just right side pelvic pain, which the doctors kind of went down the endo road. And I know a lot of people in my community have endometriosis. But then the gyno was like, no, you don't have endometriosis. So it's kind of back to square one. And I always had this intuitive thing that maybe it's not cycle related. And maybe it's that in particular parts of my cycle, I tend to eat more gluten. And it just happens to feel cyclic because I'm eating gluten because of the way my hormones are making me feel emotionally or making me crave certain things. And the problem is not a reproductive problem, but actually a digestive problem. I think it's probably colitis or something like that. And so 5 or 6 months ago, I think 5 months ago, working with my acupuncturist, I kind of presented to her and just said, look, I'm going to go off gluten properly and really strictly and see what happens. She was like, yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. And I've done the same with caffeine, including matcha. I still have it every now and then, but it's not good for me. And I don't feel good on any caffeine at all. And lo and behold, as soon as I stopped having any gluten and any caffeine, I have no brain fog. I am clear. I am able to work from like 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. if I wanted to, whereas before I could only do like 2 or 3 hours a day. I know what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm able to execute it and achieve it. And now that I have been, and also it's given me a lot more energy, so I've been able to start exercising and working out a lot more, which before the concept of working out was like going to make me cry because of how tired and lethargic and sluggish I felt. And another thing that's been really helpful in this mix is taking potassium, doing infrared saunas, and taking iron supplements. And if anyone else is anemic, you would know what I mean, that you just sometimes forget that you need iron supplements. And Brianna from By Blue Naturopathy just reminded me. And as soon as I started taking them, I just felt 10,000 times better. But it's been really obvious for me to see, because probably in that 5 or 6 months, I think there's been 4 times where I've been eating gluten without knowing that I was. And all of those times have been soy sauce, like soy sauce being in a sauce or a dressing and me not realizing. And if you have celiac or you're really gluten intolerant, it really does come to a point where you need to either ask every time you're going to eat something, does this have gluten in it? Or you need to Google it. And I just haven't quite got the comfort of like being very forceful in asking that all the time, because it is quite annoying. It often means you can't like order food online. You have to call up, you have to quiz them. So every time that I have been glutened, it is like instant depression. It's like I've taken a depression pill. And I wake up the next morning, and honestly, the decision fatigue, the executive dysfunction of like, I don't even know what clothes to put on my body. I know that I have all these things that I'm supposed to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can do them. I don't know what order to do them in. Even, I got glutened on Wednesday, and I even think that my voice sounds a little bit different after being glutened, if you noticed that. And it's been like 2 days of I had to kind of take the days off and not really work and just read. But even in that, I don't even feel like doing the things that I would enjoy on a day off because I feel so sluggish. But the point of this, why I'm sharing this with you, is it's really made me question and wonder, just being frank here, I have a lot of clients who just do not do the things that they want to do, that they know would be beneficial for them. And it doesn't matter how motivational I am, how informative I am, I cannot get them to do the things that they know they need to do. And sometimes I think, well, these people they can't have a business. They need to get a job because they just cannot get themselves to do what they need to do in order to have a business. And also this comes up all the time in personal coaching as well. I had a client who her main goal was her health, and we fought for 6 months of getting her to do a 5-minute stretch a few times a week, and she couldn't even do that, let alone exercise. And, physical movement is a big part of health. And it's made me wonder if these people, we all are lazy and we all procrastinate and we all avoid. And a lot of my community have applied or had applied this concept of blocks to when they're lazy and when they avoid. But I wonder if a lot of these people have something like my experience of a severe gluten intolerance that is undiagnosed, that means that they just feel like absolute shit all the time and they don't even know why. And it's not because they're lazy, or it's not because they're burnt out, and it's not because they're avoidant. It's because their body is just absolutely suffering and not working on any kind of functioning level. So it's, I can't give people health advice and I can't tell people what to eat, but it has made me start questioning, what if there is something that they're doing or that they have going on in their body that is making this happen. And I know for me, a lot of doctors looked at my presentation and were like, it's depression. And I get that. I get why they would say that. Procrastination is a depression response. But I'm not depressed and I have nothing to be depressed about. And I only feel low mood when I am glutened. It's like you take a depression pill. So, yeah, it's really kind of opened a lot of stuff up to me, especially in terms of if you're unable to be consistent, is there something like this? And I know for me, caffeine is a big one as well. Like it just makes me feel, I only have a weak decaf. I have a weak decaf latte in the morning or cappuccino. And I just feel fried and wired and I don't sleep well. And then I feel tired the next day. And it's just absolutely not worth it. Like, not at all, not even remotely. So yeah, I guess that's just an invitation for you to start questioning and start investigating. And if you have been experiencing like the real inability to be consistent, or you've got brain fog for a really long time, yeah, looking at lifestyle changes that you can make and play with and experiment with and see if it makes a difference. Because I know for me, it is night and day, the experience of me. And actually, I can also say that in the 6 months when I have been off gluten, I have made twice as much money as I did in 6-month periods in the last couple of years. And I literally think that's because I've been able to show up and I've had a clear mind and I haven't had brain fog and I haven't felt fatigued and exhausted. So I think it can actually be financially measured, the difference in my physical experience. I did want to, in regards to all of that, talking about chronic illness or having any kind of chronic health stuff, I did want to mention that I do have my Subtle Alchemy coaching program, which is designed specifically for people who have low energy or are neurodivergent or have chronic illness. It's a really gentle and slow approach, and it's created, and the structure of it is more friendly to people who have less time or less energy or are neurodivergent. And it essentially, one of the main differences is that if you were to do one-to-one coaching with me in a 10-week intensive versus Subtle Alchemy, in an intensive, you get 1 week to make all the business development changes that I give you. And in Subtle Alchemy, you get a month. So it's a lot more spaced out. It's a lot more gentle. And there's 7 spaces left for the next intake of that, which is starting in February 2024. So send me a message or check it out if you are someone who wants to start a business, but you just don't have that high energy. And I did have someone today comment saying that I'm one of the only coaches that she follows and she just loves me because I'm giving business advice and I'm talking, I'm keeping it real, but I'm being myself. I'm not putting on this kind of high energy, high pitched, intense caricature that a lot of other business coaches put on. And I'm not expecting people to kind of just hustle really hard and work 12 hours a day forever in order to make a lot of money. Like I don't resonate with any of that. And Subtle Alchemy is like the biggest expression of that gentle approach and that really hyper intentional approach. Other things that are going on in my life, I'm definitely in a state of kind of up-leveling everything. And if I was still in that, ill health period, I wouldn't be able to do that. But up-leveling my exercise, my meditation, how I take care of myself, my self-care, even how good of a dog mom I am, all of these things are actually my highest values. And even external things like car and holidays and business, I just forked out some money and committed to a large fee to up-level my business, which you will see the fruits of in early 2024, because I just felt like the presentation, how my business was kind of presented in the world, wasn't indicative of how powerful it is. And that will be shifting at the start of next year. So in general, just up-leveling, but also silly things like I've always had this goal just to become a better gardener. I used to be a really good gardener. I used to live in the city and have this small urban mini garden farm. And now I have this massive, huge garden, and it's just a lot of work for one person. And it's really cold here for 6 months of the year, so you kind of avoid it. But if you're into gardening, you really have to put in quite a lot of work in those cold months to really have an abundant spring and summer. And I'm playing catch up at the moment. So when I finish recording this, I'm going to go and start some seeds, probably daikon and cosmos flowers. And then I'm going to move a few things around. I also have 2 little dogs who like digging. So they have a kind of half garden bed that they're allowed to dig in. And today they are losing that half garden bed. And I'm popping a little greenhouse over it so that I can start to replenish the soil and grow some things there. Things that are growing in the garden, I've got beautiful parrot tulips and little, I don't know what they're called, tulips with serrated edge, and mizuna, kale, heaps of herbs, thyme, huge thyme bush, sage, mint, parsley, lots of pansies, and a vast amount of broad beans, strawberries. I have 3 massive strawberry patches, garlic, and heirloom carrots. I've got about 3 meters squared of heirloom carrots, not squared, you know what I mean. So that's all happening in the garden, and I'm really focused on reading and consistently exercising in my personal life. As I said, I'm almost at my 100 reading goal, and I can't wait to get to that goal so that I can just read big chunky books and enjoy and kind of dive into them and get immersed in them, rather than having in the back of my mind, oh, this book's really long and I could probably read 3 books in the time that it would take me to read this one book, and just to totally let that go. But it has been nice to have that goal and meet that goal. And I think, I think we have so many goals of money or working out or, kind of culturally pressured things. And to have a goal like becoming a better gardener or reading 100 books or, starting slow running again rather than having a goal of running a marathon can be really empowering, rather than feeling like we're constantly up against something, having these gentle goals to guide our time rather than feeling like we need to be constantly improving. Because I don't think reading 100 books has improved me as a person, has made me realize some things about myself, but it's definitely not a growth thing. It's just been something that I like to do and that I really enjoy. And I have noticed that on the months when I read more, there's a direct correlation with my happiness. So the more that I read and the more that I prioritize reading, I tend to be in a better mood and I tend to be happier. So that is something to think about. We're in spring now where I live, and we'll be moving into summer soon. And I live on a property that kind of backs onto a big lake. I'm really excited to get back into lake swimming, and I really want to have some flippers. That is one of the goals from last year that I didn't do in summer, buy some flippers and swim along the whole lake. Our little cinnamon dog isn't that keen on swimming, but Basil is a water dog and she hasn't swum in the lake yet because it's been too cold. So I'm really looking forward to a summer of swimming out in the lake with Basil. And that's kind of it. That's what's going on. It seems it's really boring, it's really basic, but really focusing on taking exquisite care of myself and my home. Another thing that I'm doing is, it's the spring equinox this weekend, so it will have been the weekend past when you listen to this. And I am going to do, a big manifestation, reflect on all of my goals, lists, visualization. I love to record affirmations. around my specific goals and listen to them sometimes in the morning or when I'm on a jog in the morning. So I'll do that. And part of that process is to do a bit of an audit. And I will do an audit on myself and my life, but I will also do a physical audit of my house and my garden and get a good, healthy list of like, what are the things that I need to change or that I need to source in order to feel the most proud of myself and my space and what I've achieved. And definitely, I think when you're up-leveling your life, if there's anything that you feel shame around, that's something that really has to happen. And I do feel a little bit of shame around my car, hence my car being the next thing to up-level. There's absolutely nothing wrong with my car. She gets the job done, and she's actually quite, she looks quite good and her interior is quite good considering how much she cost. But having, dogs put mud all over the car inside and out and having to do gymnastics in order to get my dogs into the back of the car is where the shame comes in. And also I just don't want to do it. So the next big thing is car where I can comfortably just stand up and pop my dogs in the back and they can have their own like dirty area and not make the rest of the car just covered in mud all the time. Such a like mum thing to have to deal with, but it's my reality. And I don't know, I can think it kind of makes you feel bad about yourself when you're just covered in mud all the time, like literally covered in mud and God knows what else. So that is the next thing on my list. And yeah, looking forward to a break in November and a break in January, and also looking forward to finishing up this year with clients and empowering them as they build new businesses. I do have a couple of new offers that will be coming up in the next 6 months. I think I will be offering a one-off strategy session for the end of the year, like an end of year audit, and that might extend to like begin your year with a new strategy next year, just like a one-off 45-minute session, but they will be really, really limited. I have a scheduling course coming up, as in how to build out an intentional and aligned personal schedule for yourself as an aligned business owner while still getting everything done that you need to get done. I have a kind of intention setting course coming out as well. These are all just like mini workshops, mini courses, but I'm not sure yet on whether that will be business or personal related. At the start of next year, I'm going to be doing a content club, which is going to be a small container of us coming together and us planning out our content and executing it and scheduling it for 1 to 3 months, because I think a lot of people really fall off and struggle with the actually doing it and executing it thing. They have good ideas, but they just can't get themselves to do it. I think accountability will help with that. And that's it for a while. That, nothing really new. Subtle Alchemy in February. Next openings for one-to-one work with me is in February. And everything else is just small little fun things that, we can work through and enjoy and support you with. I would love to hear what's going on in your life, if you relate to this up-leveling thing, if, having a business coach talk about their low energy levels but still showing up is empowering and inspiring to you. And yeah, we'll be back to our regular scheduling next week. Short, snappy, real talk, at least for a few weeks. All right, enjoy. Bye.